Hey guys, welcome back to Excel. This is Excel 3. Let's take it from the top here. The first thing you're going to want to do is figure out the mean, median, mode, minimum, maximum, range, 10th percentile, 25th percentile. Okay, so you got a lot of statistics to do. Now that might seem like a lot of work, but in reality, it's pretty straightforward with Excel. So let me, again, I don't like to do the work for you, so I'm going to just make a new sheet here and show you a couple things. So I'm going to make a list of numbers, which are maybe similar to what we have, but more numbers. Okay, so if I want to do a formula in Excel, remember I start with the equal sign, and then I start typing what I want, which a lot of times is named after the thing that you're doing. So for instance, the sum is a fancy math word for adding all the numbers up. So I just type sum. And now I like to highlight everything. Okay, so if I start at A1 and I click in the middle and I drag down, then it does this range for me, which is A1 colon A9. Okay, so that's the sum. All right, other things I can do. Here, I'll give you a freebie. You can do the maximum. So equals, and I just start typing M-A, oh, there it is, max. So I double click this. Now this time I'm going to write it out. A1 colon A9 close parentheses, enter. Okay, so it gives me the biggest score from that list. There's lots of things that you can find in Excel, and many of them, again, are just you just start typing the word and you'll see what you're looking for. Sometimes there is a mismatch between what you're trying to calculate and what the name is. An example of that is mean, because mean does not have a formula. Median has a formula, but mean's formula is called average. I don't know why Excel did that, but they did. Okay, so to find the average, I do the same thing. Now, let's talk, that takes you through, I think, the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 of these, because I told you what that one is called. These ones, you can just start typing the name. Mode is an example of one where you will have different options. So mode.mult, mode.single, and mode with a little yellow exclamation point next to it. I would just use the regular one here. And press enter. So you can see that it returned the number 5 because that came up twice. Okay, now this one, if we start typing range, we're going to find out that range does not have a formula. And that's because range is just maximum minus minimum. So in the similar way in the budget exercise, when you did subtraction of income minus expenses, all you have to do here is just do maximum minus minimum. And I would recommend, instead of typing out, let's say I figure out that my minimum is 3, which I think is actually true. I don't want to do 10 minus 3. I don't want to just say 7. I want to actually use the cell references, right, to subtract. And the reason for that is if I put in a new number, I want that to change. Okay. So that's range. And then in terms of the percentiles, these are a little different. First of all, they're like mode in that they have lots of different options. Again, you could use percentile, you could use percentile exclusive. Let's use the percentile exclusive. It's the first one that comes up. And basically you do the same thing. You're going to put in the data that you want, but then we also have to put comma, and then here we put the percentage that we're looking for. So if we're looking for the 10th percentile, we put in the number 10%. Okay. If I put percentile, then I want the 90th percentile. And that's what I would get. Okay. The meaning of percentile is not well understood. So first thing I would say is that a percentile is a measurement of what percent of the population is below the number we find. So let's go back and look at this here. This would be, sorry, let me pick these up and move them over. Okay, so this is the 10th percentile, and this is the 90th percentile. Make this a little bigger. Okay, so the meaning of this would be 10% of the scores are below 3. And this one means 90% of the scores are below 10. Okay? It's a little less meaningful when I only have, I don't know, what is this, 9 scores, 8 scores. It's definitely more meaningful when we're talking about like a big group of people, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 1,000,000 people. And so we're measuring something and we're saying, you know, 10% of the scores are below this, or 50% of the scores are below this, or 75% of the scores are below this. Okay. So that's part 1. There's some formatting stuff here. Don't ignore number 3, number 4. I want you to definitely do those. Part of what I'm going to ask you to do in your projects is to do some styling just to kind of own the sheet, make sure it's not all just black and white grid lines. So if you're not sure how to do that, let me know. The bolds, italics, underline, those are options for your font. You can change the font here. You can change the size of the font here. You can change the border here, get onto this little triangle, and you can see thick outside border is the one I want there. Okay, so that's part 1. Now part 2 is an extension of part 1 where I'm just wanting to focus on different averages, mean, median, mode. So we can find the mean, median, mode for all of these students. Shouldn't take you too long. Get you some good practice with using the formulas. And once you have those numbers, then I want you to turn them into percentages, and that is going to serve you in your summary question here. Compare 3 students from the summer. Homework scores are on sheet 2. By the way, these are real scores from real students. Use numbers to justify your conclusions. Be sure to fill out the percentage columns. So compare is the verb here, right? So when you're comparing, you can either talk about similarities or you can talk about differences. So I would just pick a couple similarities, pick a couple differences, right? If it turns out that, you know, student 1 has a 7 for a mean and student 2 has a 7.2 for a mean, first of all, how do we change it into a percentage? Well, a percentage, remember, is a part to whole ratio. So if I take the part, which is how much the average was, divided by the whole, which is how many points they could have gotten, I can just do that ratio. Now that's a decimal, and there's a tool in Excel that'll change it to a percent, which is here. So that would be a 70%, because 7 out of 10 is a 70%, right? And here, do the same thing, divided by 10. I can go up here and change the formatting to percent. Are these the same? Are they different? Well, they're similar, but they are different, right? So that could go in either category as I'm talking about comparing the students. I could say student 1 and student 2. Keep in mind that I made these numbers up, so you have your own numbers. Had similar average or mean scores on their homework, right? Now, use numbers to justify your conclusions. Student 1 had an average of 70%, and student 2 had an average of 72%. So that's what I mean by compare and justify. And since we're comparing all the students, you probably want 2 or 3 statements about how they were similar or different. Comparison, again, in academic settings means you're sort of talking about what's similar and what's different. Okay, I think that's it, right? You calculate all of this, you do some formatting. Over here, you're calculating the mean, median, mode for each student, and then you're looking at percentages, and then you're trying to write your answers. There is a bonus question here if you want to get into that. We're not going to do that in class. In fact, this assignment might be the first one we do outside of class. Turns out that these students actually were not very successful this summer. 2 of them got Fs and 1 of them got a D. And my question is, could you predict which one got a D from the homework score? And do these students' scores support or contradict the idea that doing homework is necessary for success in the class? So that's optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want, but if you do it, I'll give you up to 5 points of extra credit on this Excel assignment. It's an important extra bonus because I want you thinking about, the relationship between what you do and your ultimate success in the class, because getting a 10 on a homework assignment is not the ultimate goal. It is just one thing that you're working on out of many. All right, talk to you guys later.